Welcome back to Special Report. Returning now to the showdown with Russia and Ukraine along the Ukrainian border. The incident that has brought to light that with Ukraine, its place in NATO, how to respond to Russia. All of the America's allies in Europe do not speak really with a unified voice. What is good for Germany may not be good for France, for instance. We'll speak live with Ambassador Emily Haber, Germany's ambassador to the U.S., about her country's efforts in just a moment. But first, I spoke earlier with a French filmmaker and author who has seen the Russia-Ukraine standoff firsthand and takes us to the front lines. Let's get a unique perspective on Ukraine. Joining us now is renowned French filmmaker, author, and philosopher Bernard Henri Levy. His film, The Will to See, explores suffering and hardship in several nations, including Ukraine. Bernard, what do you see in Ukraine right now with the situation with Russia on the border?
What I see is an incredible act of war and blackmail by Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin is no longer a partner of Europe. He is no longer an adversary. He acts as an enemy. And you had in the last days a series of statements threatening Europe of a total war. It is a very, very serious situation which goes far beyond the fate of Ukraine.
So what is Europe to do in this environment?
Europe has to be much stronger than it is. I am frightened, for example, by the behavior of the Germans. The fact that the Germans, for example, refused to deliver weapons to Ukraine is a shame. It means that we leave the Ukrainians, the brave Ukrainian patriots, under the boot of Putin. We are engaged in a process of self-defense of Europe, and Europeans don't understand it enough. And in particular Germans, who are betraying the ideals of Europe and of the West.
Bernard, you went to the front lines there on the border of Ukraine and Russia and spoke to some of those Ukrainian soldiers.
You have to go exactly as he goes, okay? The same path.
You were walking in that straight line because of landmines that were there. We had some senators go over there and they talked to the Ukrainians and they said this time the Ukrainians are ready to fight.
This is 40 million people who remember how it used to be not to be free and to be under the thumb of Soviet Russia. They will fight.
Do you agree with that?
I'm sure, yes. It's a real army, strong army, with a high patriotic morale, and they will fight. Therefore, this war, if Putin decides to invade, will be a very bloody and dirty one. The Ukrainians today are able to fight, able to defend. I saw their trenches, I saw their weapons. They don't have enough in order to win, but they have enough in order to defend themselves.
Last thing, Bernard, you know, here in the U.S., there's a large section of the U.S. population, if you look at the polls, who are very tired of war after Afghanistan, after Iraq, and they're fearful that the U.S. could be dragged into something here in Ukraine that the American public really doesn't want us to be dragged into. What do you say to those people?
I understand that, but we don't have the choice. We are not living in a world of angels. If the Americans are not able to be respected in Ukraine, the next step might be Taiwan, might be somewhere else, and the whole world map will be changed. We will live in another world, dominated by the Chinese, dominated by the Russian. Is this what the American voters want? If we want peace, we have to accept the Cold War.
The movie documentary is called The Will to See. Bernard Henri Levy, we appreciate your time.
Thank you, Brett.